A few weeks ago, I was invited onto the NIKOS show to do a podcast where we discussed a wide range of topics from music to pop culture and what it means to video game in the modern age. Head on over and check it out if you haven't already, it's pretty cool. It was also a great experience, and it inspired me to toss my own hat into the podcasting ring. My first guest needed to be someone special, which is why I immediately decided to bring fellow chiptune composer ICEFERNO Pro onto the show. Hailing from Somerset in the UK, this British producer has been steadily making music for about 18 years at this point, and he continues to excel at his craft. ICEFERNO has a lot of experience under his belt, and he's composed music in popular DAWs like Logic Pro, Reason, and FL Studio. He also has his own store on Bandcamp, where fans can purchase his original works. His favorite instrument is the Korg M1, because, yeah. ICEFERNO and I decided to have a chat about our mutual love of chiptune music, which gave me an opportunity to learn more about where his inspiration comes from, how he stays motivated, and what his plans are as a composer moving forward. So welcome everyone to the podcast. I'm here with ICEFERNO, who's been doing chiptune music for quite a long time now, and it's a real privilege to sit down and talk with him and have him go over his love of music and what really propels him to do what he does. So welcome to the podcast, ICEFERNO.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to get with the obvious question right off the bat. How did you get into this? Like, what was the whole impetus for getting started?
Probably the first time I played Streets of Rage and Revenge of Shinobi back in 99, 2000, or whenever it was.
Yeah, that's it's funny you mention that, because Streets of Rage, Revenge of Shinobi, obviously Yuzo Koshiro. We both know that he's one of the greats. So, what do you remember the first time that you played Streets of Rage and what you felt when you heard that music?
Yeah, it was a real surprise hearing that kind of music in a video game, and I vividly remember there's a bit of a sort of audio glitch on that copy I had of it, where the percussion wouldn't immediately play until you sort of punched or did a jump attack, because I think it's something to do with the channel sharing.
It was the channel sharing, yeah, and I remember that used to hit people, and it would take up a channel layer, and it used to drive me nuts because I'm like, oh, yeah. I wish they could have had that extra channel on there. But the fact that he was able to yank so much out of that YM2612, where do you think his inspiration came from? Like, if you had to put yourself in his shoes, what would you say?
Oh, I've heard that he took a trip to LA in 89 or something like that, and that sort of exposed him to the club culture at the time, and that's what influenced the first game.
Yeah, there was a lot at the time. The Detroit style house scene was just popping up, and then across the pond where you are, it was the acid house scene that just came out of the rave scene. So there was a lot going on at that time, and then obviously from there we got into Big Beat in '94. So that's more where Streets of Rage 2 comes into play. What was the deciding motivating factor to you to say, let's play around with this music and see if I can come up with something that's totally brand new?
I guess it was just hearing what other people did, and I sort of slowly gathered ideas of my own and figured at one point it was time to actually try them out.
Right. So obviously you have a pretty large fan base, and you not only do chiptune remixes and covers, you also do your own original stuff too. You have the Streets of Wrath albums, which are on Bandcamp right now, which is very, very cool. Was it your idea to go to Streets of Wrath after having done the Streets of Rage tunes for a while, or did you always have that goal to do that?
Well, in 2013, Streets of Wrath was just a separate track, which was inspired by Streets of Rage. And it wasn't until about 4 years later, when I played Remake again, I went into the directory and discovered you could change the audio files.
Yeah.
So that was basically got me thinking about making entire soundtracks of my own.
That's very cool. Remake was, funny enough, Remake, for all the flack that it got from Sega, it was kind of the game that got people back into Streets of Rage, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, it was arguably, I'm willing to say it was arguably what kicked Sega in the ass to say, hey, let's do Streets of Rage 4. Let's get this deal done so we can actually take advantage of this IP.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell us a little bit about your background, like how you were you self-taught? Did you have any sort of composing knowledge or training, or did you just kind of learn this on your own?
I started off with lessons at school. I did sort of keyboard, piano, tried a bit of the trumpet as well. And I sort of moved on for those and eventually started using software like Music 2000 or MTV Music Generator, as it's known in America.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I got started on was Cakewalk Sonar, I believe it was. Yeah, and all I was doing was taking existing songs, and I realized, hey, you can actually edit these things. You can slice them up and add in samples and stuff.
Yeah.
So I started messing around with the songs and saying, well, let's put a little sample in here, like just something to differentiate the song. And then later on, I started thinking to myself, I wonder if there's a way to actually like, how hard is it to actually compose music from scratch? And that's how I got started. Was it a lot the same for you? Like, did you just gradually pick up a thing or two, like, and say, maybe I should get into the whole composing thing?
Yeah, I sort of experimented in the Music 2000 program. A lot of the sort of default riffs that they have, I just made songs out of those. And eventually I was able to come up with my own stuff as well.
Right. So the VST craze kind of kicked in, I'm guessing 2007, 2008, around there. That was when it really started to take off. Did you, when you saw that scene emerging, did your perception change, and when all these virtual instruments were coming out?
Yeah, I think that was around the time I started using them as myself as well. Because before, sort of between 2005 and 7, I was on Fruity Loops 5, and I was mainly using default stuff and some of the default strings.
Yeah, I remember at the time Reaper was really picking up speed too as well, but Fruity Loops, it was still called Fruity Loops, and now obviously it's FL Studio, which is I think the widest used one in the world at this point.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna pop open my drink here. Then for some reason the air escaped. Sorry about that, everyone who's listening. We're doing this off the cuff. There's no plan in here. We're just going for this thing. So I've obviously been a big fan of your stuff for a while now. You and I got started about the same time, which is ironic. I was looking back at your channel last night just to to refresh my memory of your back catalog, and I thought, holy smokes, you started about 11 years ago. I started 2010 or so. The only thing is that it took me a while for me to actually push it as a YouTube channel. Like I had a couple of a couple of Secret of Mana remakes on there, and maybe I was just fiddling around with farting around with the Streets of Rage stuff. You've kind of been at this since the start, so you've been cranking out tunes right across the spectrum, not just games, but you've also done some film film scores and some songs, some animes and stuff like that. What was did you ever get to the point where you thought, I just want to focus on games, or did you always have this idea to go and do a little bit of everything?
I tried to do a bit of everything, but I think the game and sort of Streets of Rage specifically has taken over the channel because that's what people respond to the most.
It's true, yeah. Like when I started getting into Streets of Rage 2, it was just for the fun of it, and all of a sudden it kind of blossomed. And from there, obviously, I did the Revenge of Shinobi thing, which then I scrapped my catalog because I wasn't really happy where it was going. But you kind of stayed laser focused the entire time.
Yeah, I kind of did, I guess. Yeah.
So where do you plan on going from here? Like, you've obviously done the Bandcamp thing. Are you gonna focus primarily on that, or is this more of a hobbyist thing for you? What would you say where would you say you'd like to go?
It's partly a hobby thing, but I'm also trying to sort of get local contacts and try and get back into DJing because I've not done it for a while.
What's your favorite genres when you're DJing? Like, because there's so many subgenres of electronica. So what would you say your favorites are?
I guess 90s Italian house is the big one. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
Anything that sounds like Streets of Rage 1.
I started out with like 92. I started DJing like weddings and the occasional arcade I would DJ at, and it was heavily Eurodance at the time.
Yeah.
And then from there, I heard Firestarter and my whole life changed. And I thought, wow, what is going on here? Like, because that was just when Big Beat was starting to pick up. And, yeah, I had listened to Exit Planet Dust for the first time. And I realized that I was moving into a completely different ball game here. It was so different from Eurodance, but yet it was so edgy and powerful. What was your thought about the Big Beat scene and the acid house scene and the rave scene, that the more underground styles?
Yeah, I think I responded more to those because they seemed a bit more different and willing to take risks, I guess.
Yeah, because rave was really a big one for a while.
Yeah.
It didn't last too long, but it did go out with a bit of fire. And then we got into the acid house scene. And that's where it started to influence the Detroit house scene because Shiro picked up on it. He started going from there. Yeah, it's amazing how far the dance genre has evolved. Everyone thinks it's just a four on the floor, but they don't consider breakbeat. They don't consider acid techno, all these things. So there's so many genres out there. Do you think there's room for expansion within these genres as we move forward? Or do you think they've kind of done it all?
I guess they've done it all. It's just a matter of combining what we have.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Prodigy mixed punk with dance too. That was something that no one had ever heard before. They were kind of blown away by that.
Yeah,
so as for give us a little bit of background about your video game history. Obviously, you and I grew up in that era. Kids today, they kind of don't even bother with that. What was your first video game console that you ever got?
That I owned probably the ZX Spectrum.
Oh, wow. So you went right back to the start.
It was either that or the Super Nintendo. It might have been the Super Nintendo, actually.
I don't think I ever played the Spectrum, but I heard so much about it. Was it really good at the time?
It was, pretty good.
Over here we had the precursor to the NES that first came out was the ColecoVision. I was about 5 years old, and my father's friend had one, and he brought it over and hooked it up. And I think it was the Smurfs. I was playing the Smurfs, jumping over chasms and dying. I kept dying. I hated the game. It was horrible. And then from there, the NES came out, and I never owned one, but my friend had one. And then the first console I ever owned was the Genesis, or as you guys call it over there, the Mega Drive.
Yeah.
So it was for me, that was 89, and I think the first game that I played was Golden Axe, and I immediately knew like this is something completely different.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a Genesis? Did you ever buy one?
Yeah, I eventually got one. I think at one point I even owned two because
yeah,
I bought one back, and then one of my cousins got tired of the one I gave him, so he gave that back.
Were they both Model 1? Or
yeah,
they were Model 1, yeah. And then, of course, we had the Sega CD, which was okay. And then we had the 32X, which was a disaster. I remember those big Frankenstein consoles back in the day. And I was like, what are they? What are you, Sega? What are you doing? This is terrible. So when it comes to pop culture in general, do you derive any inspiration from films and TV, or is it just games in general?
I think it's mostly games and some of my musical influences.
And who would you say the biggest musical influences are?
Well, Yuzo Koshiro's up there, and Michael Jackson's another one.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I've sort of got other inspirations per genre.
Did you ever? Are you the type of person that branches out into different genres? Maybe not as a full-time fan, but you do listen to it casually in order to try and get a little bit more inspiration, or do you stick to what you know?
Right.
Yeah. I started out, I was into heavy metal at first. My parents were rockers back in the 80s, and they got me into, bands like Def Leppard. And from there, I that's where I got my sense of beat. And then when dance came in, the beat started, that was the main focus. So I kind of went from there. But did you ever dabble in anything like that? Were you ever a metalhead or anything?
I think the closest thing to metal I enjoy is just whatever's on the Road Rash and Tony Hawk games.
Oh, yeah. that works. Yeah. Good old Road Rash, eh? Are you talking about the older ones?
Yeah, and 64 had some good stuff on it.
Yeah, they had, wasn't there a Road Rash that came out on the 3DO as well?
Yeah. That was the original port of that version.
Yeah, and then they ported it out from there, and it actually had some pretty decent music, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, I remember playing the 3DO, and there was this game, Way of the Warrior. Do you remember that one?
Rings a bell.
They had it was a really poor Mortal Kombat clone. It was terrible. It was awful, and the entire soundtrack was done by White Zombie.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I was like, this is kind of bizarre, but for some reason it worked. You're listening, you're fighting guys while Thunder Kiss 65 is playing in the background, and you're thinking, yeah, okay, this is not bad. It was the only redeeming feature of that game.
Wow.
Do you play any modern games, or did you just kind of stick to the classics?
Yeah, I'm pretty much a retro gamer.
Yeah, yeah. So you stick to obviously the retro channels and all that. Are you at all interested in the new games, or are they just not your thing?
I don't know. It just doesn't quite resonate with me like the old stuff does.
Yeah, there's something addicting about the old stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, what about all these games that are coming out that are now trying to emulate the old style? Like even Nintendo is going back to the old formula with Metroid Dread and stuff. What are your thoughts about that? How we're kind of what's old is new again?
It's kind of interesting, but in my experience, I don't enjoy those because they sort of impose modern game rules on them.
Like modern mechanics and stuff?
Yeah.
Now, that's going to parlay right into a question that I have about Streets of Rage 4. What did you think?
I didn't really like it, to be honest.
You didn't like it, eh? It's so divisive, this game, isn't it? Like, yeah. I actually love it, but it's I would obviously choose the original trilogy over that one, but it is you either love that game or you absolutely loathe it. It is pretty remarkable. Much. Yeah. But I noticed you've done some Streets of Rage 4 tracks. You've actually retrograded them on your channel. Yeah. Where did the inspiration from that come from?
I think it was sort of in conjunction with Streets of Wrath 4. When I was working on that, when I finished a certain track, I would actually sort of go on to the original and hear it because I hadn't heard any of the tracks before on making my own.
Right. Were you a fan of the soundtrack in general? Because I know that's kind of a hot button issue with Streets of Rage gamers.
I think it depended on the composer because Yuzo's tracks were really good and I felt they fit way more than anyone else really.
Yeah, Olivier, he was the other fellow that did composing. There are some tracks that I like on that soundtrack a lot, and others that they're just okay. But one of the ones I like the most is the art gallery.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, the way that one just builds with the jazzy saxophone. I don't know what it is. It's not Streets of Rage like traditionally, but man, does it ever sound good? I love that song.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What are some other, like you mentioned Revenge of Shinobi, obviously. So let's go back to the 16-bit age here.
Yeah.
You really love Streets of Rage. You really love Revenge of Shinobi. Are there any other games on the Genesis that you really thought are like dynamite music soundtracks?
Well, the Sonic series is also definitely up there.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pinpoint any others, but I've sort of discovered some on compilation cards, and I think are you familiar with the composer Koichi Namiki? I
think so. What game though?
He did not Super Thunderblade, the original Thunderblade, and Super Monaco GP.
Right. I know Super Monaco GP, and I remember the soundtrack from Super Thunderblade. I don't remember the original one. That was the Game Gear Thunderblade, right? Master System.
There was an arcade version as well.
Oh, arcade? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever played the arcade version of Thunderblade.
Yeah, but those were sort of really sort of 80s jazzy fairs. I think it's sort of inspired by fusion jazz of the time. Yeah.
Which obviously jazz fusion is the best version of jazz out there, and I'll have words with anyone who says otherwise. For me, I liked soundtracks like Thunder Force 3. That one really.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, that soundtrack is on fire right from start to finish. It's one of the ones that I actually want to redo as I move forward, just because I love that soundtrack so much. What about moving into the SNES age? Obviously, I had this conversation with the NIKOS show. He had me on his podcast 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the higher quality of the SNES chip, but was it really higher quality? Like you could only do so much with that SNES chip. Do you find that the SNES music was too derivative?
I think the SNES and sort of Genesis Mega Drive, they both had their individual distinct styles. So it was a lot easier to make orchestral stuff sound good on the SNES, whereas the Genesis sort of excelled at dance and grunge and that kind of thing.
That's a good point. Actually, I never thought of that. That's when you listen to Final Fantasy soundtracks, for instance, the orchestral, the way they do that, or Secret of Mana, is much better than they could have done it on the Genesis. I think
Yeah.
that's a really good point. I had a question and I just lost it. It was in my head. Well, we'll get back to it. Do you ever have any ideas about getting into SNES music more than Genesis music? Have you ever
Um,
tried messing with it?
I've done a few remixes for a channel he does animated stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I sort of dabbled in it a bit, but I still prefer the sort of this jazzy and sort of Streets of Rage sounds that the Genesis do.
I always thought that the combination of the YM2612 and the PSG chip, obviously the PSG chip is, you've heard it everywhere. It's been in everything. But that combination, it almost gave a composer a wider palette. Like maybe the sound quality wasn't as good as, say, a DSP chip or something, but the level of the amount of room you had to play around with sounds was a lot better on the Genesis. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so.
What was your now let's move into VSTs. Which VST do you use for Sega Genesis? I know there's a couple floating around.
There are three that I tend to go to. The primarily is FM Drive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one that I started out with. That's Ali James, right?
Yeah. Mm. And the other is the Ultimate Mega Drive sound font. That isn't really that ultimate. It's just in the name, really.
Yeah. There was Jenny as well that I was using for a while too. It was a free one, but I found it was a little bit unreliable here and there.
Yeah.
And then I moved on to the new one from Plogue, ChipSynth MD. Have you had a chance to try that one out?
I think I tried the SNES version.
Yeah, try ChipSynth MD. It's actually really fantastic. It's easy to use. It takes TFI banks and it's cheap. It's like, I think it's like $50 or something.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but it's something about that interface. I find that FM Drive now is starting to have troubles if I try to use it in a modern DAW. I don't know if you've had the same issue. Have you had any issues running it?
Yeah, sometimes it forgets my presets and sometimes the directory is unreliable.
Yeah, yeah. As far as DAWs go, which one is your favorite?
I guess Logic, although I don't use that much. I think it's quite easy to use.
Yeah, Logic is kind of the one that there's a reason they offer it as a pack-in with every Mac, right? So get people into the thing. Yeah, it's I've used it once or twice. I actually find it's very simple. I'm a bit surprised it was that simple. Very straightforward interface.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I like the way it can easily stretch samples to the tempo you're working at.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah, yeah. I was using Studio One from Presonus.
Oh, right.
And I loved it. It was the same guys that did Cubase back in the day, and they decided to, I guess, splinter off and do their own DAW. Really good, but for some reason I had trouble with the performance. Like it would hiccup and it would lag, and then that kind of forced me into the arms of Ableton, and I was using that extensively. And I actually got the hang of Ableton, and I like it quite a lot. Have you given it a shot?
I think I've got a light version, but I've never really tried it.
Its interface is so weird, but for some reason it works. It makes sense after you. It has to convince you that it makes sense. You have to play with it for a couple of times. But what was the first time that you started experimenting with DAWs? Like, and you thought to yourself, "Wow, this is a whole new ballgame."
I think I was sort of in a PC store and I found some really cheap ones by EJ. I don't know if you know that company.
No, I don't think I do.
Yeah, they did one called Dance 2 Plus, which is a sort of really entry level kind of thing.
Right.
It got me to grips with working with samples and stuff.
There was one I remember a few years back. I think it was around 2004 or 5, and it was kind of the same thing. I think they gave you a whole bunch of preloaded samples, and you could just kind of put this sample there, this sample, and you could create a song out of it. And I remember DJing a party and I just threw that song in just for the fun of it. And I didn't have people dancing for too long. They kind of got bored of it by the end because my composing skills were shit at the time. And then, but it was still, I still kind of thought, wow, maybe there's something I can do here. Let's investigate. And it took me another 5 years before I really got into it. So was it a slow build for you, or did you just jump right into it?
I kind of jumped in. It's all a bit of a blur because it happened so long ago.
Yeah, you've been at this for 11 years. So that's quite
Uh,
a track record,
well,
I
that's
think, right?
that's that's how old my YouTube channel is. But I started probably 2004.
So you've been at this way longer. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was obviously before YouTube was even around. Nowadays, we
yeah.
can't even remember a time when it wasn't here. What's the what is the goal for you within the next, say, year, like for the rest of 2022? What do you want to accomplish with the channel?
Uh, it's hard to say. I just kind of keep going and doing what I'm doing because my audience is building slowly, and I'm not sure how to make it faster. So I'm just doing what people like.
Yeah, I have this. I have the same issue too. It's hard to build an audience. I don't consider myself a social media expert or anything, which is odd because I write for a social media company, which is really awful when you think about it. But yeah, I don't really have an idea how to build a channel. I'm the sort of guy that just does things naturally, and if people jump on board, hey, great. And if not, well, what can you do? Do you have the same approach, or?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, you'd like to grow, but you don't want it to feel forced. That's the kind of
Yeah,
feel I have, right?
yeah. You can't
Yeah,
put pressure on yourself.
exactly. Or others. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you ever feel do you ever feel like you get writer's block when you're doing your tunes?
yeah. It's happened a lot in recent years, but I think I'm coping better with it recently.
Yeah, there's in my experience, there's some tunes that I've had in my head forever, and then there's others where I get to them and it's like, oh, damn, what am I going
Yeah,
to do here? Like when I just did Moon on my channel, and it was like, it's funny for Streets of Rage 3. It's one of the more straightforward and accessible songs, and I sat there wrestling with it. Like, okay, what do I do with it? I don't know.
yeah,
So, do you ever have the same issue? I guess, eh? Do you have the same problem?
yeah. Kind of. I think I've made it easier for myself though, in because I'm sort of composing to images and video levels and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I mean, you have a lot of videos playing in the background of your vids as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that for the sake of presentation, or do you think that there's more to it?
Sort of for remixes, it kind of is, but
Yeah,
at the same time, I'm sort of able to find stages that go well with the track.
yeah, that's true too. Yeah, it's funny for Streets of Rage 3. I'm listening to some tracks and I'm like, this is an odd song to put in this stage. Like when
Yeah.
I think like Moon, I would have put Moon at the beginning of the game as opposed to in the middle in this on stage 5. It just didn't seem like it fit.
Hmm.
You're going into Mr. X's penthouse lobby, and you
Yeah.
got this cool, jazzy little number going on. It's like I would have put Fuse or something in there. But as far as the soundtracks go, rank the first 3 games for me. Which, in terms of the soundtracks, what do you think is the best one and the worst one?
Uh, Best is probably 2. Worst, even though I love it, is 3.
Yeah, I think that's the way everyone. That's the way everyone thinks. Yeah, 3 is so. What do you think was going through their minds there? Because I mean, it was Koshiro and Kawashima, and
Yeah.
it was such a marked departure from 2. Why do you think they did that?
I think because Yuzo's first 2 were so similar, he wanted to sort of separate himself from that a bit.
That's
And
probably it. Yeah,
he's always into experimenting with technology.
I had read somewhere that when they did 3, they used some sort of a computer algorithm or program
Yeah.
to auto program the notes in because a normal human being couldn't do it.
Yeah, they called it
Um,
macro music language.
yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, and I remember breaking up the songs because I thought, okay, well, let's do this. I might embarrass myself, but let's do this. And I started breaking up the tracks, and I'm like, holy smokes, they're right. You could never compose this on your own. It's just impossible. This is something Skynet would make. But I always found it funny how people, although they although they thought that the 3rd game was the worst in the series in terms of the music, everyone still loves the soundtrack when they hear it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Weird how that goes. As far as new composers go, like, is there any sort of music in new games, even though you don't play new games, but are there any notable soundtracks that stick out from you from games that have come out in the last 15 years, let's say?
I think Valhalla had a very good soundtrack. I don't know if you know that game.
Valhalla. Yes,
The
I do.
cyberpunk bartender thing.
Yeah. I do know.
Yeah, it's
I do
very
know.
nice.
Have you tried Black Future 88?
No.
Oh, you got to give that a shot, dude. And even if you don't like newer games, that is such a retro. And I'm going to parlay into another topic here in just a second, but that game is so classic 16, 8-bit era. And the whole idea is you have a bomb inside of your head and you have a limited amount of time to make it as far as you can before the bomb goes off in your head. And you cannot win, but it's so old style arcade. You might just like that one. I think you should probably give it a shot. I think.
It sounds
Trust
interesting.
me. Yeah. But this is brings me into another topic too. What do you think of the synthwave scene? That's really taken off too, and a lot of composers are sort of getting into it. Are you into the scene? Are you not?
I think it depends on the track, really.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't like how it was. So it felt like it was shoehorned into Streets of Rage 4 a bit.
It was, yeah. Like especially in that final boss battle.
Yeah.
Although it's a good track, it's just weird. But as far as the genre goes in general, have you ever gotten into it? Is it your thing?
A few tracks. I can't really pinpoint an artist or anything, but I think if the overall sound is good, then I tend to like it.
Yeah, so more of a casual listener. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you would you consider yourself a '90s kid or an '80s kid?
Definitely 90s.
'90s kid. Eh? So I was born in '78, and so for me it was always the '80s. I'm perpetually stuck in that culture.
Yeah.
and I can't escape. When were you born?
88.
Oh, so 88. So yeah, so you're like me. You got straight into the '90s culture, which is when all this cool stuff was happening. Yeah, yeah, that's wild. So when you were like 6 or 7, Streets of Rage comes out, and you play it, and it blows your little socks off. I guess, right? That's cool. So as far as your Bandcamp, you have how many albums up now on Bandcamp?
Probably 10 or more.
Where can fans reach you? I'm going to put the links in the description, but just shout it out right now for your Bandcamp.
So there's ICEFERNO.bandcamp.com, and my website ICEFERNO.com sort of links to the various other places I am online.
Cool. Any big projects in the works for release?
I've got one more Streets of Wrath in the works that I want to do. It's based on the Adam's Story mod from Remake.
Oh, cool. So will you keep doing Streets of Wrath? Is it a long-term series, or will there ever be a cutoff point for you?
I basically want to take a break after this one.
Yeah, it's after so many Streets of Rage tracks, I have to take a break too and do something else. I wasn't going to tackle 3, and then fans were asking for it, and I went, okay, and I love it. I'm glad I did, but it's like, okay, I got to do something else. I can't do Streets of Rage forever. It's going to drive me nuts. Yeah, that's real. That's very cool. I want to get into also composing new stuff as well. It's one of the things that you and I share is a love for that era, a love for those types of games, but also a willingness to kind of do our own music as well. You kind of want to branch off. So yeah, so you've been an inspiration for me on that end. So thank you very much for that. I've really enjoyed your stuff. It's taken me forever to reach out just because I wasn't sure how. And then when I did the NIKOS show, I was like, you know what, this is a pretty cool format. Let's just do a podcast. Let's just have fun with this. So I thought it'd be kind of cool. Yeah. So the last question I'm going to ask, we'll wrap this up, is the one that fans are probably wondering, at least I hope they're wondering, how long is it going to be before MaestroDraven and ICEFERNO team up and do a project together?
Oh, I don't know. It could happen anytime, I guess.
I'm on board if you are, dude. We have to do something cool. We have to do like a compilation album or something. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But if you're up for it, I am. No pressure, but I thought it'd be cool. Something to put on both of our channels.
I do have a sort of idea for a guest remixer album, which I'd hope to get you on as well.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I'd be all for that for sure. I'd like bringing in different remixers.
Yeah. A sort of Streets of Wrath guest book kind of thing.
That's cool. I mean, there are a lot of people on YouTube that do a lot of chiptune remixes, but you and I seem to be the ones that are kind of at the forefront and pushing it. We're really trying to make a go of this. I would love to see more composers come to the forefront and show their work, because I would love to feature them. I'd love to work with them and collaborate with them. So maybe it's time that we form some sort of a network for all the chiptune remixers.
Yeah, definitely.
In some way. I mean, maybe we'll have a regular powwow. Maybe we'll do a podcast with them and see where it goes. I think that might be fun.
Yeah.
All right, audiences, if you're listening, you heard it here first. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna see if it works out. So I'm going to let you go there. I think this has been cool. It's been great having you on.
Yeah, it's
I've
been
really
really
enjoyed
cool.
this. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be the first of several podcasts that we'll do in the future as new projects come out and we learn new things. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, it sounds great.
I'm all for it. Alrighty. So ICEFERNO, everyone. Thanks for coming onto the show. Thanks for tuning in and listening in today, and we will catch you next time. Don't forget to check out my podcast on the NIKOS show, which you can find in the link below. NIKOS is a great guy, and he's done interviews with everyone from libertarian entrepreneur Jeffrey Tucker to Hercules actor Kevin Sorbo, which is one of my personal faves. Head on over, subscribe to his channel, and leave a like on his podcast because they're a lot of fun to listen to. That's all for now.